Hey, welcome to Lombardi's Legends podcast, part of the Pigskin Podcast Network. I am Wags. Joining me, as always, is Dane. Day after Christmas. Hope you all got all the presents from Santa's sleigh. Dane, we also got a gift from the Packers. They were able to play Grinch and steal a win from the Cleveland Browns to improve to 12-3, stay atop the NFC. How are you feeling today, man?
Okay. It was a that was a harrowing experience there late in the game. That second half, I got a little bit uncomfortable, but looking at the positives, Wags, a win is a win. It's very difficult to win in this league. For the Packers to all of a sudden have 12 wins closing in on the end of the season is fantastic. They took care of business. The Cardinals lost again, which is really, really great that they're kind of stumbling down the stretch. But Wags, and we're going to get into it. We'll talk offense. We'll talk defense. Starting to see some cracks in this team as well. Every team has some blemishes. So, but we're a Packer podcast, so we're going to talk about the good. We'll talk a little bit about the bad as well. And, but overall, happier that they came out with a win than a loss. I'd prefer if we weren't winning these games determined by what comes down to 2-point conversions going forward, and we could, close these games a little bit faster. But overall, Wags, Christmas Day, got a win, got to see some family, so it was a really nice day.
For sure. So, for any of you that join, and Dane, if you want to throw this in our chat too, for
Yeah.
anyone joining, if you have any comments, questions, feedback, concerns, whatever you got, to takeaways from yesterday's game, feel free to pop those in the chat. We'll try to highlight as many of them as we can throughout the show today. And Dane, I completely agree with you. I think we've had so much positive to focus on the last couple of months. We've gotten awful spoiled.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit of a different feeling when we can sit here after a win where we get one step closer to a one seed and just not have the greatest feeling. I think I speak for you and I, and probably a lot of other Packer fans out there, that yesterday just didn't have the best feel for a victory. But you know what? It's so hard to win in this league. It
Sure.
really is. Yeah, you look at the Cardinals are Exhibit A. Lost again yesterday, and they're 3-5 in the last 8 games after starting out 7-0. Not only have they fallen completely out of the one seed picture in the NFC, they're in a fight to even win their division, and it looks like they're kind of falling out of the driver's seat for that as well. So it's not something that you can take for granted. And so let's just start, as you said, with the positives. And for me, the storyline of the positives is Aaron Rodgers, Davonte Adams, what they were able to accomplish from a historical perspective within the confines of a victory makes that definitely a very positive thing to be able to talk about. So obviously, we all know what Aaron was able to accomplish. We knew it was going to happen. And just a really cool scoring play. I'm glad it happened early. I'm glad it wasn't forced to Devonte Adams, even though that would have been really neat if it would have happened with Devonte. But congratulations to Alan Lazard for making the historic touchdown reception, 443 for Aaron Rodgers. And Dane, we said it before the game. I shared my thoughts on it. So I want to give you the floor on what you felt and what you think that means in the context of Aaron's career and within Packer history as well.
Wags, that was pretty cool. What Rodgers said after the game, too, saying that the touchdown happened on such a simple play. One of those that he said that when he first came into the league, it was kind of one of the basics of the West Coast offense. And for him to throw it on that, I think that Rodgers has always had a big perspective on football and his place in the game and his place in Packer history, even through the turmoil of this last offseason. I think he's always kind of had in mind his place in all of this. At times, I'm not sure if we thought he would break Favre's record as a Packers quarterback. So for that to happen at Lambeau on Christmas Day with a really good football team around him, a full full fans, full stands at Lambeau Field, national audience. It was pretty damn cool. I don't know how else to put it. Pretty exciting for Aaron. He's putting together what could eventually become his 4th MVP season, which is just absolutely remarkable. It's hard to break records of Brett Favre's if you're a Green Bay Packer. It's hard to beat Brett Favre records if you're anybody. So for Aaron to be able to do that, and for Brett and Aaron's relationship to have warmed over the years, and for them now to hold each other in in terms of friendship, they consider themselves friends. I think all of it combined was a pretty emotional moment. I was really glad Alan Lazard got the ball back to Aaron. That was good that the ball didn't go into the stands. Aaron, I think at times can come off as, measured, but he's also somebody who completely understands the history of the game and what it means. So that touchdown pass was fantastic. It helped get the Packers that win that they very, very much needed. And it's just special because I don't think we ever see a guy throw that many touchdowns in green and gold again. It's just incredible what he did. I'm really excited for Aaron Rodgers. Now, what I'd really like is this year and beyond for Aaron to just distance himself and become the touchdown thrower of all time for the Packers by a very, very wide margin. Really, really happy to see Aaron still in Green Bay doing what he does best.
Yes, absolutely, because he's still got guys to catch, and he's not ahead of Favre for Favre's all-time touchdown, or not his all-time touchdown record, but the number of touchdowns Favre threw out for his career. He still has a ways to go to catch some of those guys. I think he will, and if it happens in green and gold, that would be all the sweeter for sure. And so, Dane, another positive, kind of sticking with that, and I think we can get through a few of them here, is Davonte Adams. And after a week where the Ravens, we saw double and triple teamed Devonte. The Browns, I think, have a pretty solid secondary, as we talked about coming into this. And they didn't go with that strategy, which I didn't think they would. Denzel Ward, really, really solid corner. I thought that was a good matchup. But Devonte won that battle most of the day, comes up with 10 receptions, 114 yards, 2 touchdowns. And so now Devonte is the top touchdown receiver in terms of a duo between Aaron Rodgers and Devonte Adams as he passed Jordy Nelson. So congrats to Devonte too. So that's a really neat thing. It just speaks to the chemistry and the years that those two have been together, because I know some of you younger Packer fans, it's crazy to think about, but it's been a few years since Jordy was with the Packers now. So folks might be starting to forget a little bit. I know most don't, but Jordy Nelson and Aaron Rodgers, when it was in his prime, before he had that ACL injury, was a special duo. What they were doing on the field was pretty close to unmatched. And here we are, Devonte Adams. We talk a lot about the greatness of Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, and maybe to certainly a lesser extent in the wide receiver room. We're seeing something very similar when you talk about the great receiver combinations that we've had between quarterback and receiver. And it goes back beyond certainly Jordy Nelson. We can go back to Greg Jennings. We can go back, with Brett Favre and Donald Driver. But what Aaron Rodgers and Devonte Adams are doing together is just so special. And congrats to Devonte. I know he had a couple of drops in the fourth quarter that he certainly was very disappointed and like to have back, could have iced the win. Thankfully, the defense was able to, step up and get his back, because I know Devonte takes great pride in that. But overall, just a great game, and want to congratulate him for that accomplishment as well.
Yeah. Wags, I'm old enough to remember when the Packers drafted Davonte Adams. I'm also old enough to remember how difficult his second season was in the league. He had a lot of drops. The route running wasn't there. I hope a lot of young people that are watching, or watch the Packers, I hope that they have an opportunity to maybe understand what it means to be a pro, what it means to just get better at your craft. And Devonte Adams is a prime example of that. He's somebody, it doesn't matter what sport somebody plays or what they do in life. You watch what Devonte Adams has done, and he's just worked at it. He kind of shut out the outside noise. There was a very legitimate conversation that was had going into his third season. The Packers wide receiver room was pretty stacked going into that third year, if I recall, and people were legitimately wondering if Devonte Adams doesn't make the team. That's where he was at in his career after 2 years in Green Bay. I don't know how real that was. I remember us talking, this was prior to our podcast, and saying like, no way they're cutting Devonte Adams. He's too raw, or he has too much like raw talent to do that. However, Devonte over the course of the next 5, 6, 7 years here has just gotten better and better. And now I think the saying that's going around this year about Devonte Adams is he's a top 2 wide receiver and he's not second. I think that's how a lot of people are describing Devonte Adams. He showed it again yesterday. He had a couple later in the game, issues with that ball, but he's also a huge reason they got to that point to begin with, and we're winning that football game. What I like to say, Wags, is better those drops then than come playoff time. I have all the confidence in the world in who Devonte Adams is as a guy, also as a player. He's a pleasure to watch, and he and Aaron Rodgers are absolute fire together. And we'll talk offseason way down the road. Hopefully March, we're talking offseason. But if the Packers can somehow find a way to keep 12 and 17 in Green Bay together, all the merrier. But let's just enjoy the moment right now. Devonte Adams, congratulations. Well-earned, fantastic wide receiver.
Yeah, and I think it's something for all of us, you and I and all Packer fans, to remember when we look at some of these younger wide receivers that are in the organization. And Devontae's leading the way now. But before him, it was some of those guys I mentioned. And so MVS is a perfect example this season. He's clearly taken a step in his development and how he's performing out on the field. Is he in that upper echelon level yet? Absolutely not. But he's still a young player, and I think we forget sometimes that when we see these guys make some big plays and then they make some plays they'd like to have back, that development curve happens overnight. It just doesn't. It takes time. And so we've got to be patient. Amari Rodgers, we're seeing it in his first season, is on a steep development curve, but he's got Devonte Adams. He's got Randall Cobb now back in the locker room as guys say they can look at and that lead the way. So I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind overall. But I am almost speechless when I think of all of the things that they do. There were some other catches yesterday, some back shoulder throws. Rodgers just dropping them in on the breadbasket to both Devonte and Allen Lazard. So some pretty cool stuff. Unfortunately, not a lot of them happened in the second half. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the bad. But want to stick with the good. Rasul Douglas, looking over at the defense, in the defense overall, 4 interceptions, forced 5 sacks. Rashaan Gary, Preston Smith, Rasul Douglas coming up with 2 interceptions. And then, of course, Shannon Sullivan and Darnell Savage with interceptions of their own. So the defense was kind of a mixed bag. But when you look at the positive side, if you're able to force 4 interceptions and you sack the quarterback 5 times, I don't care. And you only hold the team to 22 points. You can do better. I get that. But to me, Dane, when you look at that from the outside in, you would probably say, oh, how much did the Packers win by? Like 41-22.
Yes.
So in terms of the impact that the defense had on the game, I think starting with that, we really have to just give kudos to what they did out there. I think in some ways, some of the soft coverage that we saw from the Packers was trying to bait the Browns into throwing, because I don't think they wanted the Browns to control the ground game and run the ball. They really wanted Baker to be the one to go out there and try to beat them. And fortunately, in the first half, it seemed like the Browns took that bait and the Packers were able to take advantage of that. So Rasul Douglas now up to 5 interceptions for the year. So just specifically highlighting him because he made the game clinching interception in the fourth quarter. another big moment for this young man. And I just, you're running out of superlatives almost to give this guy credit, because he's had such a positive impact on the Packers, both on and off the field. And so I just want to just give him a ton of credit, and the defense as a whole. We'll talk about some of the bad that was going on, but in terms of the positives, I'd like to start there as well.
Special group of guys to bounce back and do some of the stuff that they've been able to do, Wags. I've been so impressed by the defensive backs, the corners this year. Rasul Douglas obviously goes without, everybody knows how good he's been. But Chandon Sullivan, I think, has played phenomenal football in the slot this year. He's a guy that we've had a pleasure to watch just grow. Every single year, he's gotten better. Every single year, he's earned snaps, and now he's just a regular on that defense. He does everything for the team, right? He'll return punts now. He'll get a kick cover. Talk about Rasul Douglas. He was on kick cover yesterday. We watched him on kick cover in addition to getting a couple picks. And those guys kind of came up around the same time, which is really fun, and they played together in Philly before now landing in Green Bay and having a lot of success. Eric Stokes, Wags. How good has he been? I mean, he's been very, very good for this team. He almost had that interception yesterday too. Baker was really in the giving mood, and I thought that Stokes played good football. Let's talk about Darnell Savage, a guy who last week had a really rough go, and I thought settled into the game nicely yesterday as the game progressed through the pass game, and also had that nice interception on kind of what I would consider a Baker Mayfield almost punt by throwing the ball up for Savage that way. But what's fun about this defensive backfield in the pass game is watching these guys all grow and mesh and develop. And at a different level, we've got to give some props to Rashaan Gary. Up to 8.5 sacks on the year, named as a Pro Bowl alternate. Talk about Davonte Adams at the top and about people being out on him early in his career. What about Rashaan Gary? The amount of Packer fans that were like, this guy sucks. Cut him. What is he even doing here? Why, blah, 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 blah. All Rashaan Gary has done, Wags, is go out, and he's one of the hardest workers on the team. We see it every day. He's hungry to be great. He's had great mentorship, I think, from both Za'Darius and Preston Smith on how to lead, how to work, how to be a professional, do all of those things. And Rashaan Gary, we said it before in our preview podcast, the last few weeks, he's been sniffing at some of these quarterbacks that are a little bit more agile, that could kind of get away. Yesterday, he finally got to Baker Mayfield, ton of pressures yet again, just disruptive. He's been the best pure pass rusher on this Packers defense this season. So we got to give Rashaan Gary a ton of love. We're not where we are without getting to the quarterback the way that Rashaan's been able to do, way to force the quarterback to get rid of the ball and then allow some of our guys on the back end to make a play on the football. So Rashaan Gary continues to develop. The sky is still the limit with Rashaan Gary, even right now. And I expect for Rashaan Gary to come up with some very big moments come playoff time.
And it's one of those things that, although sacks can come and go from game to game, Rashaan has been very consistent in getting pressures on the quarterback all year. And I don't know if that doesn't necessarily show up in the box score. Maybe fans that aren't paying really close attention don't appreciate what he's been able to do, because he's, I think, gotten better against the run as well this year. And that's been an area of his game that's continued to develop as well. Yesterday, notwithstanding for the whole Packer defense, I'm certainly not going to single out Rashaan Gary on anything that he did. Just a high motor guy and brings it every down. So you've got to have a ton of appreciation for the work that he's put in. And it's showing out there. So definitely a positive for those guys as well. I think last positive, even though it wasn't necessarily positive in an impact way, was special teams actually wasn't bad yesterday. So Dane, let's just touch on that. For me, that's the last positive. Pretty good in coverage yesterday. No missed field goals. Not really any misadventures in the punt game. our return game seemed nothing amazing. There wasn't really a positive play, but we didn't have any gaffes. So is that enough of an expectation? Should we have a higher bar, or will you just take what we got yesterday and be happy with it 9 times out of 10?
Wags, if you guaranteed me the output we just got yesterday from special teams through the playoffs, I would take you up on that offer. I have trust in this team overall, the offensive defensive phases. Special teams, we can't have miscues. If we can just play kind of that ho-hum, special teams have adequate coverage and return the ball when possible, I will take that every day of the week, considering where we're coming from. I'm not looking for this special teams unit to turn it around and all of a sudden have Desmond Howard, type returns and all of those types of things. I just don't see that in the cards this year. But if we can just be sound on special teams, I'll take it. I was really happy to see Henry Black out there on some of his coverage. I thought he in particular was very, very good in coverage. Had that really nice tackle around the 15-yard line on a kick return from the Cleveland returner. But across the board, pretty solid coverage. And we're going to need to go back and look and see who all was out on some of those coverages. We mentioned Rasul Douglas was out there. I think I saw Shandon Sullivan out there. So we had primetime premier players on some of these coverage units, as LaFleur had mentioned we might end up doing. It didn't hurt to see like Dominic Daphne back, because he gets him back out there, some of those types of guys as well. But I'll take that, Wags. I'll take that at this point because we just didn't see the miscues.
Yeah. I think before we transition into the bad, and this is a pretty good segue question. We're getting a couple of questions and comments in the chat. So I'm going to start with Dean Lieberman here. He says, who do you see coming back off the injury list this season? And the reason I thought this was a good time to highlight that is I think we're about done with our good. And so this is sort of the good and bad in my eyes, and not to be pessimistic on some of the injuries, but just reading through the lines, I think there are some things that are definitely concerning. The good news is Jair Alexander, I think he's going to be back this week. I really do. I know that sometimes we're a little bit conservative with bringing guys, but this will be his third full week of practice. There's a reason they started the clock when they did, to be able to activate him off the IR. So by Wednesday, I believe, we'll see Jair activated and added to the 53-man roster. In theory, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that he's playing this week, because they could activate him and make him not active on Sunday.
Like Bakhtiari, right? I mean, that's what we're doing with David.
But I don't think with Jair, they could have just waited a week or two to start him practicing and ramping up. With his injury, it's not anything in the lower body, so I think that would be something to be more concerned about, rushing someone back. As long as everything in the shoulder is healed and sound, I believe that we're going to see him out there very, very soon. So I'm just going to go out there and predict that he is back this Sunday. It could be another week, maybe two, if they're really being very, very safe. But I think Jair, they'd like to get him back out there for some regular season opportunities. So if the doctors give him the green light, and he's been practicing, so that tells me that he's in a position that he's probably healthy enough to be out there. So I think that's a positive development. On the downside, David Bakhtiari, man, I don't know. He has come back twice now and started practicing, and then we saw last week he didn't practice at all. They didn't say anything about another setback, but and granted, things could be completely different this week. So that was the sinking feeling I was getting watching this game and coming into it and having that news last week. Is we have been expecting this whole season that David Bakhtiari was going to come back at some point, and now I'm not so sure. He still could. They haven't ruled him out for the season, but I don't know if we should be expecting that to happen at this point. It just is not. We're not seeing a normal ramp up for someone like him to be coming back. So that tells me that he's not probably as close as we'd like. Now, maybe they take him out there and he starts practicing again this week after getting last week off. But even if that happens, I don't think he's playing this week. And he may not play in the last game either against the Lions if the Packers are fortunate enough to lock up the 1 seed by that point. So now we're really looking at a lot of question marks here with a guy like David Bakhtiari. So before we highlight a couple of the other guys, Dane, I don't know if you have a different read on that or if you have anything to add as far as David Bakhtiari's status.
No, I mean, the Bakhtiari stuff's concerning. Anytime you start to get a guy back and then you see them pull him off practice, it's a bit of a concern, right? It seems like there's something going on there that we're not completely privy to. I don't want to completely guess because we're not in the doctor's room, but you're right. This is not the routine way we would see a guy come back, especially a guy at his caliber and his level. You'd expect them to kind of work him back in a way that he really hasn't worked back up. I think the positive has been Josh Nijman in relief has been absolutely phenomenal at left tackle for the Packers. Myles Garrett is having a defensive player of the year type year. And I don't think we barely heard his name yesterday. I think he got 1 hit on the quarterback yesterday, no sacks. Josh Nijman's been playing. He's been balling. Now, the downside is Josh got a little banged up yesterday, and then our pal Ben Braden had to come in and kind of pinch hit at left tackle. That would be our, 4th left tackle of the season. So, obviously, all things considered, we'd like to have David back. But Josh has been playing really good football. But, we're thin across the board right now at our offensive line position. Billy Turner's out as well. Myers is still out. But we're running out of time to see if David's going to be able to go. And at a certain point, Wags, and I'm curious your take, how comfortable are you rolling out David Bakhtiari for the first time for him playing football in a year, in a playoff game? That's a bit concerning for me because, just to shake the rust off, especially when you've got a hot hand like Josh Nijman playing, do you maybe in that kind of scenario, is David suited up, but not necessarily the guy who's playing? Can you even do that with your all-pro left tackle? I mean, it becomes a bit of a problem. And I guess that's the concern, because I agree with you on Jair. I think Jair's coming back this year, and that's going to be a huge bolster for our defensive backfield. But with David Bakhtiari, I'm not so sure, and I'm not so sure how you manage it, even if they think maybe he could go, but they're not totally sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and one I guess we'll have to see how that plays out. We want David back, and I don't think there's a scenario where if he's healthy enough to go, that the Packers are going to hesitate to throw him out there in a game. Even if it is in the playoffs, that's not ideal, though. You're absolutely right, and this is why I get slightly annoyed with the perspective of folks that say, "Well, let's just play it safe. We've got our playoff position. Just save them for the playoffs." It doesn't work that way.
It's not Madden.
You need them to be playing football. The other thing is maybe I just have a little bit of an old school mentality where it's their job. They're getting paid millions of dollars. And if they're healthy enough to play, they should be playing. That's not to be all like, don't be on the safe side. I get it to an extent, but their job is to be out there and playing. And if the guy hasn't played football in over a year, I don't want to wait until the playoffs for that. I don't think David wants to.
No, either. David's ready to play, right? Mentally. You know that. Like, come on.
Yeah. So it's interesting, though, when we kind of look at some of these other guys, and this might be kind of a long discussion here, just kind of thinking big picture, sticking with the offensive line, technically not on the injury list, but you mentioned him, Billy Turner. I think the fact that they didn't put him on IR means that I wouldn't be surprised if he's practicing this week. I don't know if he'll play, but they've been very cagey. I don't even think we've gotten any detail specifically on what that knee injury was. I would tend to think it was some type of sprain, perhaps something similar to Aaron Jones with the MCL. I don't know. Nobody's said anything. Somehow that information hasn't been confirmed. But even if Billy Turner doesn't play this week, I think the fact that now this will be 3 weeks since we would have had the option to IR him.
Mhm.
I just suspect that they would have done that if they expected him to be gone longer. Whether he plays this week, we'll see, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's back in the next week or two. Josh Myers seems to be a little bit further off. I don't know that there's any indication that he's going to be returning, although he's been in the rehab group the last couple of weeks from what I've seen. So I think there's some indication that there's a possibility he comes back, but he's a guy you're talking about. Do you put him back in there first time in the playoffs? The answer to that for me is just flat out no. Nothing against Josh Myers, but from what we've seen from Lucas Patrick and Josh Myers being a rookie, he just doesn't have that level of equity to me that someone like a David Bakhtiari would have. So that has nothing against Josh Myers and what he was doing out there early in the season when he was the starter. But I'm going with the vet. Lucas Patrick, for all intents and purposes, has been playing darn good football. And I think our interior offensive line just keeps getting better and better every week with Royce Newman and with John Runyon Jr. Lined up on the side of Lucas Patrick. So I'm actually just comfortable rolling with those guys at this point, aren't you?
Wags, I mean, that's the thing is like there's something about an interior offensive line. Those guys, the longer you're in the trenches together playing, the more there's trust, there's a feel. It's not just a plug and play scenario. So to get those three guys right now, Lucas, Patrick has been playing just damn good football up the middle, even snapping the ball, all the kind of the cadence, the rhythm with Aaron Rodgers. I think it's there right now. And you're right. This young interior is playing so well together that to shape that up at this point, Myers is the kind of guy that long-term, the projections through the roof. We're going to be talking about Myers, I think, for the next decade. He's one of those guys that you can tell he's going to start in this league for quite some time. But he's a guy who you suit up and you're really happy now that he's going to be a depth piece come playoff time if somebody gets banged up. But I think you roll with the hot hand you have in the interior. David Bakhtiari, it's a little harder to do that. He's the best left tackle in football when he's healthy.
Yeah, and then kind of getting to Za'Darius, he's the one that I think all along we've been the most pessimistic about returning. But interestingly, because of the position he plays, I'm perfectly fine putting him out there too, because you can manage his reps and he's just part of a rotation on the outside. And, maybe there's certain situations, pass downs, whatever you want to do. If Za'Darius gets cleared at some point, I don't care if it's the NFC Championship game or even, heck, the Super Bowl. If we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, Za'Darius is a guy, to me, you can activate and roll out there. And even if he just gives you 20, 30 reps, he can have a positive impact and really be able to help this team. So positionality, too. And Za'Darius is a guy that's fortunate enough because of the position he plays and some of the other guys that we have out there that we definitely could get a boost from, even if it's only in a smaller role.
Yeah, Wag, sorry to interrupt there. I think you're spot on. Give me Za'Darius Smith 15 to 20 snaps in the playoff time in some second and third and long scenarios. Perfect. With the pass rush that we have, we don't need, don't get me wrong, I'd love to get 50 snaps out of Big Z. But if we could get 15 pass rushing snaps out of Za'Darius Smith in the playoffs with the guys we already have going the way that they're going, the addition right there could be the difference between going home early and going to the Super Bowl. And I sincerely mean that. He gets to the quarterback. He and Rashaan Gary, the way that they're playing right now, and Preston Smith at that level, that three-headed monster pass rush, almost unguardable in certain scenarios, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So, Pearson, thanks for being patient with your question. I think this starts to transition into the bad and the ugly here. So I've been holding this one in the queue. So Pearson, thanks for the question. He says, I'm not sure what was more stunning, the Browns refusing to adjust to double covering Davonte or Barry refusing to adjusting to stop the run. Dane, I was getting a lot of deja vu in this game. This was reminding me of the Mike Patton defense, more so from 2 years ago even than last year. and not taking anything away from the Browns, but man, that was tough to watch.
What was frustrating is if we stop the run, Baker Mayfield throws 8 interceptions. That's the thing. That's, I guess, the frustrating thing. So, Pearson, I feel you on that front. Looking at it from the Packers' perspective, is just stopping the runs, throwing the kitchen sink at the run game. I have all of the faith in the world that our DBs matching up against those Browns wide receivers, we could take care of business against them. So I was at a loss for words in the second half as they were just running the ball. And listen, Chubb is one of the better runners in the league. This offensive line for the Browns, when healthy, is one of the best offensive lines in the league. You know, they're built to do what they did yesterday, but you don't want to see it happen against a team with Super Bowl aspirations. And I guess that's kind of the crux of the situation, especially with Kenny Clark back. I thought that we were going to be able to win at the point of attack a little more, and they were just able to create lanes, very, very aggressive football running downhill. But I guess the frustrating factor here is it's not like Baker Mayfield was flowing through the air, where we kind of had to defend against both. We knew we could stop them when they were throwing the football. It was running the football. We knew it was coming. We just couldn't stop it. And that's something that needs to be corrected because, there's some teams coming up in the playoffs that could just completely thrash us with the run game if we're not careful. And we haven't seen a lot of this year either. So I guess the other concern here is this kind of issue creeping up this late in the year makes, that starts to give me a little bit of pause for concern, Wags. I'm curious your take on this because I want us to be playing our best football coming up here in the next couple of weeks. I don't want to see regression. And in the run game here, I feel like we saw a little bit of regression on Saturday.
Yeah, we need to get back to playing more fundamentally sound football. The Browns averaged 8.8 yards per carry. If game flow is different, that's an NFC championship game against the 49ers type thrashing from, it's a big concern. And we saw this against the Ravens. We talked a little bit about it after that game, that our outside contain was just atrocious. And it seems like it's regressing and it's becoming a problem. And it doesn't start there. Our defensive line needs to play better. We got Kenny Clark back, and I thought he was a huge boost in being able to get pressure on Baker Mayfield, even if he didn't get a sack himself. He was the guy that kind of forced a couple of those. So give Kenny some credit there. And most of their runs weren't coming up the middle. They were basically running them off tackle or off end, and it seems like the issue there, Dane, is teams are picking up clearly on our contain, first of all. Now, and then I'm concerned that we have a lack of athleticism and speed up front, and that's getting a little bit exposed. Dean Lowry played some of his best football of his career in the first month and a half of the season, and he came up with a big sack yesterday, but in the run game, I don't think he's been particularly effective, and he hasn't been. I don't know if he's at full strength. At this time of year, I get it. The legs get a little tired. But he's had to have a ton of reps too. So I'm not trying to bang on the guy. He's just one of them. Tyler Lancaster has had to come in for, I think, more snaps than would be ideal. We've been seeing that the last couple of weeks. He just doesn't. Tyler Lancaster has a specific role, but if he's out there on second and third down and getting the number of snaps that he's been called for, I think that's going to be a problem over the course of 4 quarters against teams that are able to not even run the ball at the level the Browns do. But if they're getting better quarterback play than what the Browns got from Baker Mayfield, that's a problem. So I'm a little bit concerned about the performance of some of the guys and what we're asking for from some of the guys. So I don't know if we need to firm up some of our rotations a little bit. And then you look at the edge, Jonathan Garvin and Tipa Nalei. I know Tipa came in a few weeks ago, had a great first game. He is giving 120% effort every down, but I think he needs to learn to play within himself a little bit. And I'm sure the coaching staff's working with him on that. But those two guys, we're getting beat pretty badly. If you look closely, they're getting washed out of a lot of plays, and that's putting a lot of strain on our second level to be able to fill those gaps really quickly and covering more ground. So it's a concern. I think it starts there. The guys up front need to stay within their gaps. Hopefully, we need to get better play from Kiki as well. Just hasn't been very consistent this season. So I don't know where you go from here for sure, but I think it starts with maybe focusing a little bit more on the run than trying to get pressure on the quarterback. And there's downsides to that too. I understand, but maybe this is a little bit of a wake-up call for the Packers defense and for the Packers defensive coaching staff, because the one thing I will say is Coach Barry is not going to just brush this away and say, we're focusing on stopping the pass. And Patton seemed to just not really care too much about stopping the run. I don't think we're going to see that. Now, can they fix this? That's going to be the bigger question. So, Dane, I don't know if you have any ideas for what else we can do, because I don't want to have to get to the point where we're needing to bring safeties up into the box to try to stop the run. I don't think that's the answer. Personally, I think it starts in the trenches.
Yeah, Wags. And I'll tell you what, with Kingsley Kiki out yesterday, I was surprised by the snap counts. Shout out to Cheesehead TV. Just put up the snap count. So I was kind of taking a peek at that. The defensive line, Kenny Clark had 60 snaps, Dean Lowry at 52. But after that, Lancaster, 34, TJ Slayton only with 24 snaps. I would have liked to have seen TJ Slayton bump up a little bit. We've seen him in higher snap counts. I think his high this year is around the 40 mark. I would have liked to have seen Slayton get closer to 30 snaps. He's a big-bodied guy. 330-pound defensive lineman who at times has been very, very good against the run, albeit as a rookie.
He made a great play yesterday, basically clothesline Chubb and brought him down with, I think, one arm, his left arm.
Right.
I completely agree. And don't you think, again, nothing against Tyler Lancaster, but 35 snaps for him, that's just asking too much.
Well, especially when you've got TJ Slayton there, right? I think there's a good spot for Tyler Lancaster on this defense right now. And he
10
to
15
snaps. To 20, I'd even be okay with, but then bump up TJ Slayton a little bit more. So there is a start for me. Our pal Jack Heflin looks like he got 4 snaps. I'd like to see him work in a little bit, fresh legs. Young guy who's eager, see him get after just a little bit more. He actually reminds me a lot of Tyler Lancaster, albeit maybe a little bit more athletic with a little bit more pass rush upside. The coaching staff sees these guys day in, day out in practice. They, I think, do their best to get the best guys out there on the field, and they're a 12-win football team. So I'm not going to sit here and just completely bash them. However, TJ Slayton is the guy, the key, at least across the defensive line, that I would like to see bump up in snaps a little bit more. He's very active. We've seen him be able to wreak havoc against opposing offensive lines when he's been able to get extended series of snaps. So, maybe that's too simplistic, but I do think it's a start, Wags, to get Slayton some more of those snaps. He's just been good against the run. And as you said, that clothesline tackle, he's capable of doing that against professional, very, very good running backs. He can shed blockers. He can just cause a little bit extra issues, bump up those snaps. I think we'd see the stopping the run just a little bit stronger.
Yeah. And I mean, Tyler Lancaster might be better down to down than Jack Heflin is at this point. But the point is that is Jack Heflin better in the second and third quarter for a few snaps? And
Right.
then is Tyler Lancaster better, later in the game if he's a little bit fresher? So, I mean, we're not here, you're right, to tell the defensive coaching staff how to coach and what rotations to make. But we're also smart enough and understand football well enough to be able to see that there's a problem, and obviously they're going to be making some adjustments. So just pointing out that that might be one way to improve some things. I don't think just giving certain guys more snaps and keeping them fresher is the only answer, though. They just got manhandled, and let's give Cleveland some credit, but they were down 2 offensive linemen too were on the COVID list. And so we had a couple of guys that normally aren't playing in the Browns, and they just completely dominated up front. So it's, again, not necessarily an effort thing, but I think it's a fundamental thing. And some of those cracks have been showing in the foundation up front. This isn't a 1 week thing. It was exposed a little bit. But I think the last, 4 weeks or so, we've been seeing a few more things. So hopefully we're able to at least be better and get some better play from those guys that moving forward, because we're definitely going to need it. I think in the secondary, you said we had pretty good plays. One concern I have is the number of big plays that they've been giving up over the last 4 or 5 weeks. So Dane, just looking at Darnell Savage, he got an interception yesterday, and I don't want to point the blame on him. I've been saying this for a while, for all of those big plays, certainly not his fault, but he's the guy that's, quarterbacking back there along with Adrian Amos. And so ultimately, whether it's his fault or not, he's going to probably have a little bit more scrutiny put on him. And frankly, I just don't think he's been playing at the level he was at the end of last season, or even in certain stretches in the middle of this season. So not singling him out, but I just have such high expectations from him that I think he needs to be better. I'm sure he feels like he needs to be better, but what are some things that maybe he can do to adjust so that he's making the smart plays and really working well within the constraints, and not having these kind of situations where, whether it's his fault or his teammates' fault, whatever, the fact is that there's some miscommunications happening. We saw that in the Browns' last touchdown yesterday, where their tight end scored and it was just wide open. It seemed like there's just a breakdown that shouldn't be happening, especially at this point of the season.
Yeah, there did seem to be a tad bit of miscommunication there on that play. And I think overall, Wags, with Darnell, one of the things that we see from him, one of the things we love about him, one of the things that can drive us mad as well, is he is a bit of a ball hawker. He's a guy who, is going to try to go for the big play whenever possible, but sometimes that can come up and bite you a little bit as well. So I'm not sure what happened on that miscommunication there, but it seems to have been an issue a couple times so far this season. I don't know if that means the Packers need to put him in better positions to be successful, and I don't know exactly what that would entail, but I don't have a great answer for you, to be honest with you. I think we're going to be relying on him down the stretch here to make plays and be in the right position at the right time. And I think that the Packers are going to keep rolling him out here. He's one of the most talented guys in the defensive backfield. Physically, he's got a lot of the tools that you look for from a safety. But we just need him to be in the right position at the right time. And these miscues need to be cleaned up. And I'm hopeful that they can get those covered up quickly.
Yeah. And I think it's one thing that I would say is some of these issues it didn't align perfectly, but started to crop up a little bit when Jair got injured. So when Jair is out there, you can get away with freelancing a little bit more. And so I think I wouldn't say that's completely unrelated, but and that's not an excuse for Darnell Savage, though, because he has to understand who he's playing with and the strengths and weaknesses of his teammates as well. And while Eric Stokes has been getting better and better and better and playing at a very high level, and we've seen what Rasul Douglas is doing, that doesn't mean that there isn't situations that Darnell Savage needs to understand what his responsibilities are first and foremost, because you're right. I think there's times when he will take a gamble because he's trusting his teammates too much in certain situations, and that's putting them on an island and in a difficult spot. And while some of those gambles can pay off, sometimes they don't. And so I would prefer that, look, we've got our secondary, you could argue, is the strength of the team, and especially when Jair comes back. So I don't really think those gambles are really necessary. Just play within yourself. When we play even top shelf quarterbacks, they're going to give us some opportunities. So take the opportunities that they give us. We don't necessarily always have to be forcing the issue. I trust this defense as a whole enough. If we're just getting back to playing fundamentally sound football, that's going to be effective. What we can't have is be getting gouged, because even with the struggles of our offense in the second half, which I think is the last thing we'll transition to here shortly, the reality is that we're going to, for most weeks, hold on to the ball pretty well offensively. And I think we're going to put up points at most weeks, yesterday afternoon notwithstanding. So the defense's role is really just to get back to the basics. I think that's if I were on the coaching staff, that would be my message, is let's just shore up some of the fundamental things here. We had I like the swagger. I don't want them to be playing tentative, play aggressive, but within yourself at the same time.
Wags, we've been going for almost an hour, and I think we have not talked about how fantastic our sponsor is yet. So I think we should maybe think about our wonderful DraftKings sponsor.
Yeah, so folks, DraftKings is the official sports betting partner of the NFL. Thank you, Dane. I've been so into our Packer discussion that I've been lost in that. But Dane, you have been doing a great job of sharing and keeping us up to date on your wife Andrea's progress, specifically on daily fantasy on DraftKings. Yeah. So how's she doing so far this week? And does she have any big plays in her back pocket for today?
She had Aaron Rodgers going on Christmas Day. So, he had a really nice first half. I think she was hoping for him to duplicate it in the second half, but another MVP style performance for Aaron Rodgers. And I'll tell you what, she uses DraftKings Sportsbook. She used that promo code TPPN. And, she's really been enjoying the app, Wags. I'll tell you what, she had never used it before. I've said it before. I'll say it again. She checks it out. It's fun. I'll look over. She's tinkering with her lineup. She's trying to decide who to put into place. I give her advice. She does the opposite. That's why she's winning. It's been very fun for her. Some good weeks, some not so good weeks, but she's still up on the year, having an awful lot of fun using it. So, and I don't think she would have done this, Wags, if DraftKings Sportsbook hadn't made this offer. So please, folks, if you haven't done it yet, go use promo code TPPN and just get in on the action. You're going to have a lot of fun.
So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TPPN. Throw down $1 on any NFL game and win $100 in free bets if either team scores a point. That's promo code TPPN this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit and $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. So, Dane, I think one of the things that I was just transitioning to then is the struggles of the offense in the second half. So we talked about the good way back at the top. And I don't know if it was a little bit of, hey, Aaron Rodgers seemed to be a little bit gimpy. His toe got stepped down a couple of times. I don't think that's an excuse that anybody's pointing to. Davonte had a couple key drops, but even at that, the offense had already gone the whole second half, and just specifically with the drop in the last series that probably would have iced the game. They only scored 3 points the whole second half, and that was on the opening possession. So the play calls was not really too thrilled about, but what was that about? Because this offense was just humming along. We had another issue in our first series. We were 0 for 2 on third down, had to go for it on fourth down, deep in our own territory, got it, but then essentially had to punt then after the next couple of plays. But after that, the rest of the first half just humming. And then all of a sudden, again, this is a recall to 2 seasons ago where we would have, stretches within a game that our offense looked amazing, and then other stretches within the same game that our offense couldn't do anything. So this is an aberration, not overreacting, because it's not something we've been seeing for the most part this season. But what was it about yesterday in the second half that you would most point to, Dane, for the reasons why they all of a sudden started to struggle after the way they were playing most of that first half?
Well, it's tough, right? I mean, the offense went out there, put up 21 points in the first half. And then that second half, they come out there and they had 5 possessions in the second half. We're able to get 1 field goal, which ends up being the difference in the game. It certainly didn't feel like that was going to be the case coming out of halftime. And what, we saw, they came out there, they had a couple 3-and-outs for a couple possessions. They got 1 first down in the final drive. And really, I think what happened was the pass game just didn't click in the second half. And I thought that was very odd based on how things went. And also Aaron Rodgers, average yards per attempt was under 6 yards, per pass. It was kind of perplexing to see in the second half the wheels fall off of the passing offense. And they just didn't seem to have that rhythm. You're right. It felt a little bit like 2 years ago where things can come in bunches, but they couldn't put together a full game. And that was what was so maddening is I just can't imagine, Wags, that the Cleveland Browns came out and completely revamped their game plan over the course of halftime and made adjustments to stop the Packers. It felt more like the Packers were shooting themselves in their own foot a little bit as well. Also, the Matt LaFleur challenges were kind of head scratching as well. I thought it was kind of odd to challenge the Winfrey no catch in that situation in that game. Now, did that change flow of the game? I don't know, but it was just kind of a strange thing to do, I thought. But it just felt like the second half, the Packers were scratching for inches, where in the first half, the Packers were, kind of all in and getting a lot of chunk plays. So the offensive, the pass performance really seemed to fizzle out there in the second half. And I point to that more than anything as a reason why they weren't able to get things going.
And all but that possession and to open the second half where we got the field goal, all of our other points came off of Baker Mayfield interceptions.
Yes.
And probably the last possession would have resulted in the same thing if they weren't just running the clock out. But so there wasn't necessarily, you could argue, any real rhythm for this Packer offense the whole game. I'm not going to go to that extent because they still had to execute when they had those series, go down and score. 3 for 10 on third down is not going to get it done. Very unlike what we've seen from this offense most of this season. It was actually, that second half was a lot like week 1. It was just very strange. And I don't know what the deal was. And LaFleur, I'm not sure if once we were up 24-12 and then the Browns the next couple of series didn't really do much, even though they were moving the ball. It felt a little bit like the Packers were just like, all right, we've got this one in the bag. Let's just not make any mistakes. Let's run the clock down. But in the NFL, you've got 30 minutes to play in the second half. And I'm sorry, I guess technically after that first series, you've still got 25 more minutes to play football. You can't play that way when you're only up 12 and then up 9 going into the fourth quarter. Let's hold our foot to the pedal and put this team away. We just needed 1 touchdown in that second half, and the Browns had no chance. And even without that, we were still able to win the game. So that just goes to show how ineffective that Browns team was at being able to come from behind. The fact that they were still almost able to do it, and we got maybe a little lucky in a lot of ways that they weren't able to get into field goal range and have an opportunity to win that game, just shows you that this was not, a Peyton Manning-led Colts offense from 2005 that we are going against here. Folks, this Browns team, I mean this, okay, this is a little disrespectful probably, but they're just not very good. That offense is not a good offense. They can run the ball, but that's about it. That's not a team that should be able to come from two scores down late in the game and have an opportunity to win, particularly when the defense forced 4 turnovers and we didn't give up any. That should not have been a close game at the end. And while it's traditional for the Packers, based on our history, to focus on getting gouged in the run game defensively, the real issue for me, and I think you said it yesterday after the game, was just offense in the second half. If we go down and score once or even twice, really, considering what we were doing in the first half, this is a 38 to 22 type win. And we're a little bit hand-wringing about the defense, but nobody's really going to be too concerned about it in the big picture.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the difference right there. I think what we need to do, because it reminded me a little bit, although the outcome was different, of the NFC Championship game. If you remember, Tom Brady gave us the ball 3 times there late in the game. Jair Alexander was all over those interceptions. And the offense is what kind of fizzled out in the NFC Championship game. It was not the defense. So we need to correct that issue. And mind you, folks, we're talking like they're not winning right now, but the reality is we're trying to win a Super Bowl. We're not trying to win a couple games, sneak into the playoffs. We're trying to win a Super Bowl. And I say we collectively as fans, as a team. And you've got to just be better against bad teams. You're right. I don't think the Browns are all that good. It's not some gas, some breaks. It's all gas, no break. And I just would like to see us kind of get that closeout, because coming in to the second half there, I really felt one touchdown, not the field goal, although it was great to see Mason drill that thing. One touchdown there would have, I think that's a dagger. That's a killer. And I want to see this Packers offense have that "we're going to kill you" at the end of the game or early in the second half, kind of just finish this off, make the Browns have an insurmountable lead. And we didn't quite have that yesterday.
Yeah. And I mean, not that it happened obviously intentionally, but Eric Stokes needs to hold on to that interception that he had. And then whether the offense would have gone down and scored off of that turnover or not, we still win by 2 possessions more than likely, or maybe the Browns get fortunate enough to score a touchdown really, really late, and it wouldn't have made me comfortable, but it's more of an onside kick, desperation type situation. The way it played out, you're right, we won, but I don't think it's something that we want to just brush over. We expect this team to be better. We're going to play better teams. The Browns had a good year last year, but they're just not playing at that level right now. And this was not a team that we should have been struggling to put away the way we did. But Dane, that being said, just to put a bow on it, we're 12-3. We're 1 Cowboys loss in this next couple of weeks away, and we're not going to count on that, but 1 Cowboys loss away, and then 1 more victory in our final 2 games from locking up a 1 seed. So let's just focus on what's in front of us. Do you have any other closing thoughts before we get into our Big Cheese Players of the Week and sign off here?
Yeah, just one quick thing. Special teams, we talked about it at the top. It was good to see Sean Davis get some snaps. Ennis Gaines and Vernon Scott all had snaps yesterday on special teams. Special teams played better. We'll have to go back in the tape and see the impact that these guys made, but all some DBs that we really like. I think that have come up from the practice squad, other than Vernon Davis, who's just got active, is actually able to get out there and play on game day. But those guys all had an impact yesterday. The coverage units were better. Excited to see that. Maybe we're figuring something out there. Maybe it's an anomaly, maybe not. And also just a congratulations to Ennis Gaines. Pretty cool story. He was on our podcast before the season started. For him to get his first NFL snaps, well earned by Ennis to get out there and play some football.
Yeah. So let's get into the Big Cheese Players of the Week, and we're going up over an hour, and then we can wrap this up here, Dane. So I'm just going to lead us off offensively. I'm going to go a little bit outside of the box. Aaron, historic, day. Second half leads a little bit to be desired. I don't think there was anything he did particularly wrong, but that said, he's quarterbacking this offense. Davonte, you could give it to him. I'm not going to, just because of the drops. it doesn't diminish his overall performance, but he's better than that. He knows it. He said it after the game. But to get big cheese, we've got a high threshold. So, Dane, I'm going to go with Yosh Nijman and give a big shout out to the rest of this offensive line. While we didn't punish them in the run game, we protected Aaron Rodgers tremendously yesterday. And I think this is a little bit overdue. What those guys were able to accomplish against a pretty good defense in the Browns in terms of their pass rush, not top flight in the league, but a standout guy like Myles Garrett is part of that, a little bit dinged up or not. I think those are the guys that stand out to me that really earned the big cheese and Dairyland Dominator shout out of the week. So I'm going to go with them up front, but I don't know if you have anyone else you'd like to highlight on the offensive side.
No, I mean, Yosh is the man. I don't know how else to put it. This could have been a really different ball game if Myles Garrett looks the way that Myles Garrett looks against almost every other team in the league. Tall order yet again for Yosh. And he played phenomenal football. He's aggressive. He's got great feet out there. So Yosh Nijman, I stamp it. I love when we can give it to an offensive lineman, and Yosh is a good dude, so really glad to do it.
Yep. And Dane, it's a pretty obvious one on the defensive side. So I don't mean to steal any of your thunder, but Rasul Douglas, I think enough said.
Our guy.
The man earned Big Cheese Player of the Week once again. And I don't really care what people want to say, NFL fans or mostly just Viking fans that are crying around the league about the Packers getting away with a couple of non-calls, but to me, that was the right call in that situation. There was a lot of contact initiated by Peoples-Jones, and I think it goes both ways. It wasn't something that they couldn't have worked through. The Packers have been on the flip side of plenty of those. So sorry, not sorry. Rasul Douglas, thank you, young man.
Yes.
You have made a potentially bad situation, taken it single-handedly and turned it into an amazing positive. 2 interceptions, Pro Bowl alternate. Couldn't be more happy for you, man. Well done.
Yeah, well done, Rasul. Awesome, well earned. We saw earlier Pearson asked the question, can we extend Rasul? Rasul Douglas will be a free agent after this year. Packers, I think what I say is let's just enjoy the ride right now. You need to have special players step up in big moments. Rasul Douglas is doing it right now. And I'll tell you what, as good as he's been, I hope he does even more under even bigger spotlights here as the season wears on and gets paid as much money as he can possibly make somewhere, because he's just playing great football for the Packers right now.
For sure. Dane, special teams wise, I don't know if anybody truly stood out. Maybe just looking at someone on the coverage unit. We don't have to, but there's been a lot of weeks where we felt they didn't earn recognition in terms of big cheese and for reasons that were legit. Anyone you want to nominate here, though, from a special teams perspective? Because I felt like their performance yesterday was at least worthy of a Dairyland Dominator, if not a Big Cheese. If there was anyone that stood out to you from that side.
Yeah, I'll put Henry Black on that list, Wags. I thought that Henry played good football. Really sound, really stayed in his lanes yesterday. Played a ton of snaps out there, and well earned. Sound tackling as well. The defense didn't have as sound of tackling, one of the worst performance I thought, but I thought special teams wise, they were very sound. So I'll nominate Henry Black.
Okay, I will go with that. And so congrats to Henry Black. Was able to get a tackle and assist on our coverage units. So we'll take that every time. And again, it wasn't like there was a big impact, but you don't necessarily need that as long as there's not negative plays happening on special teams. I think you're going to take that every week. So good job by Coach Straighten and the special teams and the special teams players for putting in a solid performance in a 2-point game. If there would have been any gaffes whatsoever, there wasn't any margin for error. So they picked a good week to really solidify and have a solid performance out there.
Wags, I think we've said it all. We'll be back on Thursday to be talking about the preview before the Minnesota Vikings game. Could end up being a very important game for this Packers season here. You mentioned it, Dallas loss and a Packers win, and we're locking this thing up. So a lot of good football left to be played. I'm eager to talk about it. We could have talked about this game and this team all day, but I know folks want to get on with hopefully their nice Sunday. Enjoy the football games today, knowing that the Packers have already won again, 12-3 on the year. Wags, should we just say it?
Go Pack, go.